The echo hangs in the air like a curse. A man stands frozen, gun still smoking in his hand. His name is Thomas Hewitt, a blacksmith, not a killer, but the bandit at his feet says otherwise. Blood pools in the dust. The bandit's eyes are open but empty, staring at nothing. Thomas's hands shake. He didn't want this. Nobody ever does. The townspeople emerge from their shops and homes like ghosts, their faces white. Mrs. Chan from the general store, old deputy marshal, the preacher, all watching, all silent. "He came at me," Thomas says, his voice cracking. "He had a knife. I didn't have a choice." But no one is listening to his explanation. They're all watching the body. They're all thinking the same thing. This wasn't supposed to happen here, not in our town. The preacher kneels beside the dead man and whispers a prayer nobody asked for. And somewhere in that moment of shock and silence, a woman on a horse, traveling the desert road just miles away, hears the story carried on the wind by a passing rider. She stops her horse. She closes her eyes. When she opens them again, they're filled with something darker than grief, something older than mercy. But before this moment shattered their world, let me take you back to where it all began. Thomas Hewitt was a man of routine. Every sunrise found him at his forge, hammering horseshoes and nails, repairing wagon wheels and tools. His hands were scarred and strong. His heart was quiet. He had a small house on the edge of town with a vegetable garden his late wife had planted 5 years ago. He kept tending it, not out of hope, but out of habit, out of respect. He had no enemies. He owed no debts. He wanted nothing but to work until his hands gave out, and then to rest. "Morning, Thomas," said Sheriff Garrett, stopping by the forge with a cup of coffee. "Quiet night?" "All nights are quiet now. That's how I like 'em." The sheriff smiled, the smile of a man who'd known Thomas since boyhood. "Good man. Let's keep it that way." But the town was changing. More travelers were coming through, not all of 'em good. More dust on the roads, more stories of trouble 2 towns over, 3 towns over. Thomas noticed it, the way a man notices clouds gathering before a storm. He didn't speak about it, though. He just kept working. Then one evening, a stranger rode into town. His name was Jack Caldwell. He had the look of a man running from something, or towards it. Hard eyes, a scar across his jaw. He didn't smile. He took a room at the boarding house. He ate alone. He drank whiskey at the saloon, but never too much. He was controlled, careful. Nobody knew he was a bandit, not yet. But Thomas noticed him watching, always watching, and Thomas felt the quiet of his life beginning to crack. For 2 weeks, Jack Caldwell simply existed in the town. He wasn't loud, he wasn't threatening, he just was. But something felt wrong. The stable boy mentioned that Jack asked questions about which houses had money, which families traveled alone, which merchants kept gold in their stores. "Just curious," the stable boy said. Didn't seem mean about it, but the way he asked, it was like he was memorizing. Thomas heard this at the saloon. He said nothing, but he listened. Then one afternoon, Thomas was closing his forge when Jack appeared in the doorway. The setting sun made him a silhouette. "I've got a horse needs shoeing," Jack said. "I'm closed for the day," Thomas replied, not unkindly. "I'll pay extra." Thomas looked at the man, really looked at him. There was something desperate behind those hard eyes, something hungry. "Come back tomorrow," Thomas said. Jack stared at him for a long moment. Then he nodded and left. But that night Thomas couldn't sleep. He found himself watching the window, watching the empty street, listening to the wind. The next morning, the sheriff came to the forge looking troubled. That stranger, Jack Caldwell, he had words with the merchant about supplies last night, got aggressive. Nothing that warrants arrest, but he trailed off. I've got a feeling about him, Thomas. I've been doing this job 30 years, and I know when trouble is wearing a human shape. What are you going to do? Thomas asked. Watch and pray he moves on. But Thomas knew he wouldn't. That afternoon, Jack came back for the horseshoe. Thomas worked quickly, wanting the man out of his forge. As Jack was leaving, he paused at the door. You ever feel trapped? Like the whole world is against you? Like you got nothing left to lose? Thomas didn't answer. That's how I feel. And that's the most dangerous thing a man can be. Then he left, coin payment left on the anvil, and Thomas understood. This town is gonna break. 2 days later, Jack Caldwell was seen riding with 2 other men, rough men who looked like they knew how to do things that decent people don't speak about in daylight. The sheriff called a meeting. Thomas attended, along with the merchant, the banker, and the preacher. They're planning something, the sheriff said. I can feel it. I'm going to ask them to leave town. On what grounds? The banker asked. We haven't got proof of anything. On the grounds that I'm the law here and I say so, the sheriff replied. But there was doubt in his voice. He was a good man in a lawless time, and the law wasn't always enough. That night, Jack came to the saloon. Thomas was there, having a quiet drink. Jack sat 3 stools away and ordered whiskey. Tell me something, Jack said, speaking to Thomas, though not looking at him. This town, everybody knows everybody, right? Everybody's got a place, a purpose, a reason to exist. I suppose, Thomas replied carefully. Well, I don't fit anywhere anymore, and I'm tired of not fitting. So I'm thinking about making my own place, taking what I need. The merchant's got $300 in his safe. The banker's got more, and nobody's going to stop me because this town's too scared to do anything real. Thomas set down his drink. Why are you telling me this? Because you're different. You don't judge. And I'm giving you a warning. Stay out of what's coming. Don't play hero. Just live your quiet life and you'll see tomorrow. Then Jack left. Thomas immediately went to the sheriff's office. He just confessed to planning a robbery. I heard it myself. Did he? Or did he just say some words a man might say if he was angry and drunk? We don't have enough, Thomas. I'd arrest him and he'd be out on bond by morning. But within an hour, the sheriff and a deputy rode out to confront Jack on the road. They had an argument. Jack resisted. The sheriff fired a warning shot into the air. Jack rode away, his companions with him. For 2 days, nothing happened. The town held its breath. Then on the 3rd night, the merchant's store was broken into. Nothing was taken. It was a message. They're coming back. Thomas was closing his forge at dusk when he saw them. 3 riders, approaching fast and deliberate. Jack Caldwell led them directly to the blacksmith shop. The others came prepared, masks, weapons, purpose. Inside, Jack ordered. Thomas's mind raced. There was a back door, a chance. But he moved slowly, buying time, hoping the sheriff would pass by. Why my shop? Thomas asked. Because the sheriff will check the bank first, the merchant's store second. But the blacksmith, he won't think to protect the blacksmith until it's too late. And I need the tools. I need the money you keep in that drawer. And mostly, I need you to not interfere." But as they moved toward the money, Thomas saw his chance. The forge was still hot. There was a metal rod glowing orange, waiting to be worked. Instinct took over. Some part of him that belonged to a younger time, a time before quiet, made a choice. He grabbed the rod. Jack pulled a knife, not a gun, a knife, and lunged. "Don't be stupid." Thomas swung, not to kill, just to defend, just to push him back. But Jack came forward anyway, fury in his eyes, and in the chaos of that moment, Thomas drew his revolver, a gun he kept for protection, but had never fired at a man. The shot was deafening in the small space. Jack fell, the knife still in his hand, surprise written across his face. The other two men froze. Then they ran, abandoning their companion without a second thought. And Thomas stood in the smoke, looking at a dead man on his floor, understanding that his quiet life had ended. The sheriff had called Thomas to his office. "We got a telegraph this morning," he said, his voice heavy. "From a woman. She's coming here. She says the man you shot was her son." Thomas felt something hollow open inside him. His mother? Says she wants to know exactly what happened. Says she wants to see the man who killed him. "I had no choice," Thomas said automatically. "He attacked me." "I know, but knowing the law and accepting the law are two different things for a grieving mother." She arrived 2 days later. Her name was Eleanor Caldwell, and she was perhaps 60 years old. She wore black and moved like a woman carrying stones in her chest. She went to the undertaker's first to see her son. Then she came looking for Thomas. She found him at his forge, working as if the world hadn't changed, as if his hands could still make ordinary things for ordinary days. "You're the man," she said from the doorway. Thomas set down his hammer. He didn't try to run or hide or make excuses. He simply turned to face her. "Yes, ma'am." "Tell me," she said. "Tell me why my boy is dead." And so he did. He told her everything. The way Jack had come to town, the robbery he'd planned, the danger he represented, the moment of violence. Eleanor listened without moving, without changing her expression. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Jack was the youngest of 3 boys. The other 2 are dead. One from sickness, one from a horse accident. My husband died 20 years ago. Jack was all I had left." She turned away to look at Thomas's forge, at the half-finished work on the anvil. "He wasn't always a bandit," she continued. "He was a good boy, but life kept knocking him down, kept telling him he didn't belong anywhere. A man hears that enough, he starts to believe it. He starts to believe he has nothing to lose." "I'm sorry," Thomas said, and he meant it. "So am I. I'm sorry my son became the kind of man that forced you to kill him. I'm sorry I wasn't there to save him from that. And I'm sorry you'll carry this weight now, just like I carry it." She looked at him directly then, and in her eyes, Thomas saw no rage, only terrible, infinite sadness. "I came here thinking I wanted revenge, thinking I wanted to hurt someone the way I'm hurt. But looking at you, I just see another person the frontier broke." Thomas felt tears he thought were long since burned out of him. "I never wanted any of this." "Neither did he," Eleanor said softly. Neither did he. Eleanor left town the next morning, but before she went, she spoke to the sheriff and to the preacher. She told him what she believed, that her son was troubled, that Thomas had acted in self-defense, and that more tragedy wouldn't honor Jack's memory. The town accepted this. The sheriff's judgment was ruled justified. Thomas was cleared. But something had changed in the town, something deep and quiet. Thomas continued working at his forge, but now when he looked at his hands, he saw not just the work they did, but the weight they carried. The taking of life, even in defense of life, had marked him. The vegetable garden his wife had planted grew more wild and overgrown. Thomas didn't tend it as carefully anymore. It seemed to him a fitting metaphor for all things, how even careful care cannot prevent decay, cannot stop the frontier from weathering everything to dust. Sometimes he thought of Eleanor Caldwell, riding toward a home that held only ghosts now. Sometimes he thought of Jack, a man who'd needed a place in the world and never found one. And sometimes, on quiet nights when the forge was cold and the town was sleeping, Thomas would sit on his porch and look at the stars, thinking about mercy and justice, about the difference between them, and how rarely we find both at once. The frontier had taught him something true, that most violence isn't born from desperation, but from cruelty, that most of us are doing the best we can, even when our best isn't good enough, even when it ends with someone laying dead in the dust. But he survived it, he lived through it, and that, in its own quiet way, was enough. Thank you for listening to this tale here on Frontier Love Tools. This story of Thomas and Eleanor reminds us that the frontier was never just about gunfights and glory. It was about ordinary people caught in extraordinary circumstances, trying to survive with their humanity intact. If you enjoyed this story, make sure you subscribe, because out here, every sunset hides another story waiting to be told. And if this one stayed with you, it's because it's true in all the ways that matter. Until next time, stay strong, stay human.